Camilla, it's so wonderful to have you here. Hi, everyone. As you know, I'm Amy, founder of The Bold Agency, which is an agency designed to help executives and leaders tell their stories on LinkedIn. I am absolutely delighted today to have this amazing guest, Camilla, who is the founder of Corazon. Camilla is a fellow ex-Tweep, and I slid into her DMs last year because I had created a women's Slack channel for women founders and aspiring founders so that we could all come together and basically shoot the breeze, support each other, talk about the ups and downs of being a woman entrepreneur. And yeah, here we are today to have a very honest and real conversation about going out on our own. So, welcome, Camilla. I would love you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, for sure. And thanks so much for having me on. And also thank you for the spaces that you continue to create for female entrepreneurs and all sorts of different communities that like us that really need that space. And I can't tell you how great it was when I literally launched my business on LinkedIn like with a post and on that day you saw it and you slid into my DMs and you're like, hey, I'm building this community. Do you want to be a part of it? And I was like, whoa, there's other people out there like me. Like this is amazing. So that was really great and has continued to be great. So now that I've sung your praises, let me talk about myself.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm Camilla. I run Corazon, which you nailed the pronunciation. It's a storytelling and strategic communications consultancy that works with all sorts of different types of companies, mostly tech companies, although we do have clients outside of tech as well, from growth to seed and all the way in between. Helping them figure out what the story is at the heart of their business and how they can leverage that story to drive impact with the audiences that they're trying to reach. So that might be customers, it might be investors, or it might be even their own employees. And yeah, that's what I do. It's super fun. And as you said, like I've had a long career in tech that started out at Twitter. So that's you and I share an origin story, a villain origin story.
Sorry, yes. Yes, we do. And I think there's something very special about the Twitter community, which is also why I was like, if I slide into your DMs, I just know you're going to appreciate this. And we already have like a common bond over that. Tell me a little bit about, because I'm obviously also kind of in this game as well. And I realize that storytelling is so important. And any of the content that I've created on LinkedIn, the stuff that has done the best is around storytelling. It just does really well. And that's why I love what you're doing. And I think LinkedIn, especially, is a place where there's a lot of corporate nonsense. And on the flip side, there's also a lot of people telling really personal stuff and treating it like it's a blog. And that's not interesting either, really, for a lot of people. So I think it's finding that balance. So tell me, why did you choose this path?
Since early on in my career, I've just had a really strong sense of what it is that I'm good at. And unfortunately for me, that is aligned with what I like to do. That's not the case for everyone. But I figured out pretty early on that communication and storytelling as a part of communication is one of the key aspects of human connection. And human connection is how we get people to do things that we want them to do. It's how we get them to support causes that we care about. It's how we get them to align with us from a values perspective. It's how we build teams. It's how we build communities. So it's something that I've always just really resonated with. And so, my career has wended through communications at Twitter to marketing at Salesforce to marketing and communication roles at various tech startups from, an AI seed startup through to a Series D, global fintech company. And in all of those roles, I have brought to the fore the importance of telling a great story and understanding your audience and figuring out how to tell a great story specifically to that audience, because I think it's the most compelling way of getting things done. And what's interesting is people often forget that in a business world, that's still true. We're used to interacting with
Mm.
stories, Harry Potter books, Titanic, the movie, podcasts, going to the theater. It's a form of entertainment, right? That's how we kind of think about stories. Not everybody thinks about stories as being the thing that you get when you sit down in a boardroom or in a company meeting, right? And so I saw it as my job to take stories, which is the thing that is inherently human and connects us all, and bring it into a business world and help people learn how to use it in a business capacity.
I love that. I love that. Everything that you've just said really resonates. And I've been thinking a lot about this recently because many founders and executives that I speak to, they're like, oh, I'm not that interesting. I don't have a very interesting story to tell but I can relate to that because I also felt the same. And it's only in probably the last year I've been telling a little bit more of my story. And I've been looking at frameworks to use to tell said story, whether it's, whether you're an executive or for me, like kind of trying to build my own business. The framework that I believe really works, especially on social media, especially on LinkedIn, because it's a careers platform, is this zero to hero.
Mm.
So, I started off doing this and I didn't have that much money and I had this idea and everyone said it was terrible. And then I took it out to the world and I got a little bit of investment or I just worked 3 jobs to make it work. And then now it's this huge company. I mean, even the story about how Facebook started or how Apple started, or was it Google that was in the garage? I love that. And people love that. Like people love those zero to hero stories. And the thing is that we all have them. Like we
Yeah.
all have these stories behind us, and it's about pulling out the points that are interesting, and they don't even have to be wildly controversial. We're living in this world where we're pulled in all directions. It's the attention economy. So our
Mhm.
attention is constantly being sought after wherever we go from the moment we wake up in the morning, especially if we use social media. So when you're constantly being sold to at all different directions, you're always looking for clickbait or you're always looking for something kind of dramatic
Mm.
to put your attention towards. But that gets confused because actually a very mundane story can actually be very compelling. There's a lot of interesting content now on TikTok that does really well. These vlogs that are like, oh, come and spend a day with me here, come and spend a
Yeah.
day with me there. That stuff is doing really well. And it's almost like I saw someone recently comparing it to reality TV.
When people try too hard to create like a perfect, polished perception of their journey, that's not going to land. And if you try too hard to like dial up or dial down even like the hardships, it becomes less believable. Like people like personal stories. It's right, you're kind of referring to these like get ready with me videos on TikTok where it sounds like you're just chatting to a friend in their bathroom or whatever. It's like that's the relatability piece that people like. Now, the rules are slightly different in a business context. I'm not saying that like we should be seeing CEOs showing us their golfing outfits on LinkedIn or whatever. Like that's not what I'm suggesting. But I think there is some truth to the fact that the more relatable that you can be and being honest about your story, that can be really the thing that kind of connects with people because anything that feels too manufactured turns people off.
You obviously went out on your own, and I'm in the process of doing the same thing. In fact, I've
Mhm.
basically just done it, which is wild.
Mhm.
And I'm inspired by people like you who do this and who create the path for other women to go solo because it's terrifying in so many ways. So I would love to just hear about what that journey was like for you. Why did you go out on your own? And yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah. And I love talking about this because I think it is like a very scary thing from the outside, particularly for women. We tend to be a bit more risk averse and we tend to want to have more things sort of in place and more security, in our minds and logistically in our lives where we'll take a plunge like that. And that was very much true for me. And I think both of those things can actually work at the same time and create kind of a path to success. So for me, first of all, like the concept of entrepreneurship is something that I needed to like break down in my mind because I had this impression that like entrepreneurs are like Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and like these people who have a genius idea that changes the world at scale, makes them crazy billionaires and influences millions, if not billions of people. And I kind of thought, well, I don't think that I can do that. Like, I have a decently high opinion of myself, but I know I'm not Bill Gates. So, I was kind of like, well, that's not for me. But I also knew in the back of my head that like I genuinely love my work and I feel really lucky for that. And I think I have a unique approach to my work. And I wanted to be able to capitalize on that and build something that would allow me to do the work that I love my way and also with the flexibility in my life that I kind of wanted. So for quite a long time, I'd had this big vision of what it was that I wanted to do. I wanted to build my own company that was around communications and storytelling in some capacity, but I didn't know really exactly what that looked like. I went to business school back in 2017. I finished in 2019, and I wrote my essay about wanting to build this company. And so every job that I
Wow.
took after graduating business school, I would sort of look myself in the mirror and say, like, am I ready? Like, is it time? And the answer just continued to be no for various reasons. Like, I had one time actually a VC sat me down and gave me really good advice that was like, you need growth experience. Like, you need to go be in companies that are scaling. You need to see what it's like. Cause I had been really just in big tech at that time. And so I made it my mission to like go out and see and experience everything that potentially my clients would be going through one day. So that's why it was really important to me to cover every stage of growth and to cover a range of different industries. And so I went on a mission, a multi-year conquest West to get all of the experience that I needed to make myself feel qualified to do this. So
Mm.
that was one component. The other component was financially, like you do take on some degree of financial risk when you go out on your own, right? Like it's just a fact. You go from having the same amount of money deposited into your bank account every month to not knowing how much you're going to make one month to the next. And you need to be in a place, I think you need to be in a place where you feel financially stable enough to do that. So I had a number in mind that I wanted to hit in terms of savings to make myself feel good about supporting myself should the worst case happen and nobody wanted to hire me. I would still be okay for a period of time.
Yeah.
And that number is going to vary for different people, but I do think it's a good thought exercise for people to go through and say, what is my risk tolerance here? What am I kind of comfortable with? And so then the third aspect for me was about my offering, was about like,
Mm.
okay, what is it that I actually want to do? I am not somebody that was just going to like go out in a bowl of flames from my corporate job and then be like, okay, time to figure it out. Like I wanted to have my offering buttoned up. I wanted to know that I was differentiated. I wanted to have built a brand and I wanted to have like a strong network to know that I could hit the ground running. And like in an ideal world, I would even be able to launch with a couple clients ready to go, which did is what ended up happening because I didn't want that lull, that loss of momentum to go
Mm.
from being in house somewhere at my corporate job to then being like, I'm on my own, but like I don't have anything to show you yet. Like I don't have a website.
Yeah.
I don't have, that didn't feel good to me to like go into sort of stealth mode. I wanted to just come out kind of with a bang. And again, that's going to be different for everyone, the amount of work that you want to do in advance. But for me, my advice would be like, do as much unpaid work for yourself as you can while somebody
Yeah.
else is paying you. And then
Yes.
when you're ready to go, then you can feel a lot better about doing that. Now, obviously, the caveat is like, don't let it compromise the work that you're putting into your full-time job. I never let it impact, my role leading a communications team, but I also like didn't have much of a social life for a year and I worked a lot on
Yeah.
this weekends and things like that. So that was the compromise that I made. So yeah, it was really those three things that managed to get me from a place of like not thinking entrepreneurship was in reach for me
Yeah.
and having it be a pipe dream to like being able to make it a reality.
Yeah. And I love that you literally spent years, like you made a long plan.
Yeah.
And the thing about giving up your social life, I can totally relate to this as well. Yeah, because when I got laid off last year from Twitter, I mean, I had wanted to go out on my own for ages. And I think when the rug was pulled from me, because I really valued security, and I think as well, because I lived in London for a long time, you get into that mindset, I think, in London. Well, I did anyway, where you kind of have this particular type of life and you're almost trapped in it because you're like, I have this life and now I need to have this job that meets the lifestyle that I have developed in London. And I had a super hectic social life, obviously an expensive gym membership, all the things that we have. Um, and the last 3 years for me, there was a lot of upheaval.
Mm.
And it was when I went to Berlin actually as well. I saw things differently. That was when I first took on my first contract role. But I agree that it takes years. Like it took me years as well to figure out, first of all, what am I doing? How am I going to find something that actually is going to work? I did not want to go out and do something that failed. I mean, I did last year. I made a terrible choice of co-founder and yeah, it didn't work. But that was also really, really amazing learning for me. And I think that the mindset as well behind being an entrepreneur, like you said, I feel exactly the same. It's like, oh, it's Bill Gates and it's this guy and that guy and the other guy. And I'm not an entrepreneur. And even like saying it out loud, I'm trying to say it more to myself and be like, I'm an entrepreneur, and then not like totally have a cringe moment or have like
Yeah.
meltdown and be like, who do I think I am? I'm not an entrepreneur, but I am. Like I literally am. We both are. But it
Yeah.
is a mindset shift. And the other thing I've been thinking a lot about, which I want to see how you feel about this as well. A few years ago, I was in this, it was in COVID, and I was in one of these WhatsApp groups, and it was like 24 days to a full abundance. And I was
Mhm.
like, here we go. Like, this is such, I don't know what this is. But I thought, let me just lean in and let me do a few days. And I really didn't buy it. Now, I am a spiritual person. I really appreciate things like yoga, all of that stuff. I don't do it as much as I would like to. But something about what I learned in that WhatsApp group and by doing those morning sessions of abundance shifted my mindset around abundance. And it made me realize I was living in scarcity for so many years. And it's similar with, I've spoken to a lot of women over the years because, I'm very passionate about equality and equity. And I speak very openly about the salary negotiation topic. And because I've seen it on the flip side as a recruiter, when I ask people about their salary, they get really stressed especially if they're a woman or they're from an underrepresented community. There's this, I can see it's like glazed over in their eyes, and there's this mindset of like, that this particular number that they're aiming for is already to them, if especially if they go in high, it's really uncomfortable for them to even imagine that they are worthy of this.
Yeah.
And let's say 100 grand a year to one person is not that much money, but to another person, it's like, oh my God, I don't know if I will ever in my life get that. And money is so subjective. And that's something I've really had to remind myself. And if you're
Mm.
surrounded by people that think very small when it comes to money and when it comes to business, it's really damaging. And I've been really working on my mindset around abundance, and even like the idea of clients, getting clients on board. It's like, no, I don't need to be in a position where I'm just surviving. I want to thrive. I want to have a good pipeline of clients. I want to have a lot of money coming into my business bank account every month. And
Yeah.
I'm constantly thinking, okay, what does that look like? And how many people do I need to speak to in order for that to kind of to happen? So
Mm.
tell me about your mindset around money and around business, and has it shifted over the last couple of years, or what was that journey like for you?
Yeah. Um, so it's interesting. The first thing that kind of came to mind for me was this one thing that I didn't really think about all the way through when I started my own company is like, yes, I do now get to do the work that I love a lot of the time without anyone telling me that I'm doing it right or wrong. And I get to choose which clients I work with, which is incredible because I can choose clients that align with my values and, my ways of doing things. That's all great. That's about 50% of my work. The other 50% of my work is running a business, is like doing
Mm,
all the stuff that comes with entrepreneurship. So like I am now a salesperson. I am also an accountant. Like, it's like all of these different kind of aspects of stuff. And that's the piece I didn't think so much about. I do enjoy it, thankfully, but it's just like a whole new skill set. And the thing that it made me think of was on the biz dev front and like on the sales front, I think this like abundance mindset you're talking about is so, so important because clients and potential clients can really smell when you're coming from a place of like desperation and scarcity and when
yes.
you just really need their business, right? And that's like a turn off. And it's human, it's like our human psychology. It's like the way that it works. And like, for anyone who's been through like the dating world
Yes.
out
I
there,
was
it's
gonna
the same
say.
thing, right? It's like it's just human nature.
Yeah,
And
we can
so
smell the desperation. The
you can
same with
smell
job
the
seeking,
desperation, right?
everything.
Exactly. And it sucks, right? Because it's like, well, but that's because those people like do genuinely really need that thing. But like what I learned very quickly was coming from an abundance mindset when it comes to finding clients is super important. And it's like by believing that there are a lot of potential clients out there, you manifest that there are a lot of potential clients out there. By projecting that, that kind of becomes the reality. And it's small things that you can shift, right? And it's like rather than like chasing people up and like being relentless with them, it's like if they're not replying to you, then you don't chase them anymore because you're too busy with your other clients for that.
Yes.
And like if somebody's asking like for a meeting time, like you don't want to have a blank calendar that's like fully available to them. Like you want to have other stuff going on
Mm,
that shows that you're not just like waiting for their call.
yeah.
So I think that mindset shift has been really important when it comes to how you project like to the world and to potential clients.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I also agree on the point that you said about it's really bad because like people are genuinely desperate, especially at the moment, and it's horrible. But there's been this whole controversy about the green banner. I don't like the green banner because I do think it gives that essence. And I'm like, listen, like me or hate me for saying that. I'm just trying to help you get hired. So people can smell that off people. And unfortunately, the world that we live in, like people, whether you're hiring or you're giving someone business, they don't want to work with someone who's desperate because it's just the human condition. And like you said about the dates as well, it's like if you're sat across from someone and you know that they're absolutely desperate for to get into a relationship, whatever it is, we can sense that. Like
Yeah.
it's like literally one of our innate instincts. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And just on the sales piece as well, because I've been thinking a lot about, what does it take to be a good entrepreneur? And
Mm.
I do think fundamentally being able to sell something, being able to speak confidently to someone and ask them questions and listen to the answers of the questions and understand like what's top of their mind. And I shared this post this morning, basically just highlighting the way my brain responds to a cold email. And all I see when I read a cold email is just me, all their stuff, nothing to do with me. They've not literally even looked at my LinkedIn tagline. They've looked at nothing to do with my business. And I'm
Mm.
like, I'm absolutely never, ever in a month of Sundays, I'm not going to work with you because you've no idea what I'm thinking about. And you've not even, you could have just plucked it out of the air, but you could have made an educated guess about
Right.
what would be on the top of my mind as a brand new woman founder who's
Yeah.
whatever trying to work with executives. Like, talk to me
Mhm.
about how I can access the right people, at least. Even just
Yeah.
mention my company name. But I don't know how this stuff works, but I agree, like understanding the fundamentals of sales. And I follow this guy called Daniel Priestley. He's really good. He's done a couple of really good podcasts and books, and he talks about this with or without you energy. And I
Mm.
think if more of us took this with or without you energy into sales conversations, and whether you're looking for a new job or whatever, whether you're having a promotion conversation with your employer, if you have this like, well, I'm going to do this anyway.
Mm.
So you are either on board or you're not. And if you're not, that's fine, but you might lose out. If we
Yeah.
can channel a bit more of that, really shifts the dynamic of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree with that. And I think like, the abundance mindset is also really important for leaning into one of the aspects that like one of the benefits of, for all the emotional roller coaster that it is, and like all the ups and downs that you go through as an entrepreneur, one of the big benefits is you get to do the work you love with people that you resonate with, right? And that's not going to happen if you don't come at it from an abundance mindset. Because, I've had some potential clients approach me and ask me to do work that is either like it's in my skill set, but it's not like what I focus on or what I want to be spending my time doing.
Mm,
Or to be honest, I've had conversations with some potential clients and some potential founders where I'm like, we're just not values aligned. Like
yeah.
culturally, this is not a match.
Yeah.
And coming at it from an abundance mindset is like, well, then I don't have to do this piece of work and I can save my time to do work with people who I have better values or culture or alignment with. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're coming at it from a scarcity mindset, then you're just going to end up doing work that you don't really want to be doing, which is the whole
Mm,
reason or one of the reasons that you like stepped away from your corporate job in the first place.
yes. Okay. There's two things there I really want to double click on, as they say in the
Mm.
corporate world, which we don't say anymore. The power of saying no. You just mentioned it.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you because I've had to say no to a couple of things recently. And afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Like, this could have been an opportunity. And you almost like grieve the life that could have been if you took on this piece of work. But really, I'm like, no, no, no. I am in focus mode now. I'm getting my head down. I'm building my pipeline. I'm making a map of who I want to work with, and I'm going out and getting it. And like to your point about this is not work that I'm focusing on.
Mhm.
And I have to keep reminding myself of that and keep saying to myself, my friend calls it the power of the positive no. It's
Mhm.
a no, this doesn't work for me. Thank you anyway, though. No,
Yeah.
however we want to say it. And I think having a way to say it that's like, yeah, unfortunately, that's not the type of thing I do, or that's not something I can take on right now. Thank you, though. Really, thank you for considering me and moving on is I think that's actually one of the fundamentals in being successful and being laser focused on what we are good at and what we want to do and saying no to clients that you're not aligned with. And there's plenty of them out there that me and you are just not going to vibe with.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that I can do that now. And I can just say, like, I don't think you're either ready to work with me or that we're, yeah, going to be a good match.
Well, and doesn't it make you feel better and more assured like after you have that conversation? And of course, yeah, you're gonna have the doubt of like, did I do the right thing? But I also walk away feeling like good in my core because I'm like, that was values aligned of me. Like I feel good because I was like true to myself. And I think like there's two examples that I would point to. So one, by the way, like it doesn't have to be an outright no. Like depending on how bad the situation is, like another tactic that I sometimes use is like I just price it really high. And I'm like, if this is not a piece of work that I really want to do, I'm going to choose like a number that I think is like really out there. And if you want to pay me that number, I'm happy to do the work, like no problem.
Yes.
And so like, that's one way. If you're on the fence about it, you can say, okay, what is my price? Because you have the freedom to set the price for your time and your skills. So I've done that a couple of times where I'm like, I'm not sure. Sometimes I get a yes, sometimes I get a no. And either way, that's how it was meant to work out.
Yes.
And then, the second example is I had a potential client come down the pipeline recently, and they had like an assistant reach out to me that was the first port of call, completely fine. They had sort of outlined a project, and I said, there's not quite enough information here. I would love to like meet with the project stakeholder so I can get a little bit more information. It's important so I can get more information. It's also important so I can meet the project stakeholder because if you haven't met your stakeholder, you are not going to be successful as a contractor and as a consultant. Like you need to have somebody on your
Mm,
inside who is your advocate. Like that is just like absolutely categorically true. Usually for me, that is like a CEO founder, or sometimes it's somebody in some kind of marketing capacity.
okay.
Depending on the size of the company, but like really, really need that. And they couldn't give me that. And so I said, I'm sorry, but then I can't do this piece of work because I don't feel that I'm set up for success. And like I can tell that this isn't like a cultural alignment for me because I don't believe in hierarchy that way. And that's just not how I'm used to working. And yeah, I missed out on whatever that potential revenue could have been, but I think I would have been quite miserable like doing that piece of work. So
Mm,
I came away feeling like, okay, I was like true to myself with that decision, you know?
yeah, I love that. And I agree with you. Like you do have to meet the people you're going to be working with because
Mhm.
if you get a bad vibe, it's a nightmare and it will actually just drain the life out of you.
Completely. And like it goes both
Yeah.
ways too, right? It's like I know I have a particular flavor and like I want my stakeholder to meet me and say, yes, I align with like your way of working and your way of seeing
Mm,
the world and we're on the same page and like go get it. And if you don't like my vibe, like that's completely fine. You're not gonna
mm,
bruise my ego. But then that's better to know now, right?
yeah. 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 I also want to talk about that video that you shared with me the other day about the McKinsey Lean In report, was it? Where there's a TikTok video just for the listeners and the watchers, where this lady is quoting the Lean In McKinsey, the latest McKinsey report.
Mm.
And she is saying that one third of women are thinking about quitting their jobs, and that a lot of women are basically thinking of leaving the workforce because they're doing still the lion's share of the work at home. And then they're coming into roles and just kind of looping it back to what you just said about, like, I'm not going to be set up for success. I think a lot of us in the corporate world aren't really set up for success. And I have felt that in many roles I've been in where, our strengths are not being focused on. I think that goes for everyone, really. It happens a lot. But in the current corporate setting, because it's such an employer-led market right now, there's so many people in the workforce that, let's say, don't fit in, whether you're a woman or you're from an underrepresented community or you're neurodivergent, whatever it might be, or you're all of the above.
Mm.
It's a really hard time to be employed in the corporate world. And that report is really interesting and really telling because I think the last few years have been really challenging for a lot of people. And a lot of people are reevaluating their lifestyle and their career choices. And I think because of COVID, a lot less of us are thinking about the status, the job title. We are more thinking about how my strengths are being utilized and where I'm able to be my creative self and where I'm going to feel valued. I think that's something that is definitely kind of happening behind the scenes. But I also think that when these reports come out, sometimes I feel really disillusioned. I'm like, oh my God, are we actually meant to be in the workplace? Like, what is this? Especially working mothers and women that are having to do all the work at home and then come in. I'm just like, I can barely look after myself. How do people do it?
I know. It is definitely disheartening. And having actually dug through that report a little bit, as I know we both did, there are some things in there that are just like depressing about the fact that like women still are not getting promoted as fast, even though representation has increased at some of the top levels. There's just not the mobility that we should be seeing at the entry levels and things like that. But the flip side of it for me was I actually took it as quite a positive because one of the reasons that she cited for this one third of women thinking about quitting their jobs was that women are recognizing that they have skills and passions that they can really lean
Mm,
into, not necessarily within the confines of a corporate structure. And I thought that was cool. And that speaks to the increasing empowerment of women, the fact that we're looking at our own careers as something that is within our control and isn't just to use our talents to enrich other people, but that
mm,
actually we have the freedom and the ability to go out on our own and do our own thing if that's what we see fit. And I look around and I see more and more women in my circles making that choice and doing that thing. I wasn't like so sick of the corporate world and I wasn't just like so frustrated with that and that's why I did this. No, like I did it because I've always wanted to do it and I've always
mm,
wanted to live a life that feels aligned with my values and gives me the freedom and flexibility that I want to work when I want and where I want. And so that was the silver lining to me was that I think I saw more women kind of in that report making that choice for that positive reason rather than because they were just being like chased out of the corporate world because it's not meant for us. Because I think we can thrive just as well as a man can in a corporate world. It's just harder sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know if I think we can thrive as well as a man. I think it depends on the company. I think there are
It
some
does.
companies that it does. We both worked at Twitter and that was a really, really lovely place to work.
No, but
But
I mean, you're completely right. And I've worked in places since then where I certainly did not thrive. And part of that was because I was a woman and I had very like honest and really uncomfortable conversations with leadership about that. And so it also just sucks when you find yourself in a place where you have to be the one to fight that battle. You're like, I'm already on the receiving end of why this is hard, and
yeah,
now I have to explain it to you.
yeah, and then get gaslit.
Right.
I mean, I feel a bit of both. I feel like I'm done with the corporate world for now, at least. I've worked with some lovely companies, but I don't know as well with just the way what I'm personally learning about the way my brain works. I just have to be able to be creative and I have to be able to build my brand in the way that I want to build my brand. I'm a bit rogue sometimes. I'm bold, which is the name of my company, and that's how I want to be and how I want to show up. I want to go to a speaking gig and talk from the heart, and not feel like I have to be under someone else's brand and careful what I say. I'm just like I am about being real and also I really want to inspire other women to go out on their own as well. So I do agree with you. I think there was pieces of that that I was very happy about. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'll help all of them build their brand on LinkedIn. Because that to me feels like my bigger goal is like I want to help people who don't feel like they fit in the workplace come out of the corporate world and
Yeah.
feel empowered to go out and work for themselves because I'm like, if I can do it, anyone else can do it as well. Not that I mean, I'm still at the very beginning of my journey. How do we get more women to feel empowered to go out on their own? Where do you think we could begin with inspiring other women? Like, obviously, we're having this conversation, but I feel like there's more that we can do, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. And I think like representation, as with anything, representation is key, right? And the more space that we can take up and the more noise we can make, and whether that's like podcasts or posting on LinkedIn or whatever it is, I think like all of those things, the more you see it happening around you, the more you're going to realize that like you're not in a minority and it's not scary. And that's why, I said at the beginning of the conversation, like I was super grateful when you reached out initially because it just gave me that sense of community at a time that I really needed it. And so I think like creating those spaces is definitely one of the ways. But yeah, I mean, it's tough because I also think we are naturally more risk averse than men. And men just have
Mm,
this sense of like, it's the classic thing of like they look at a job description and if they hit 20% of what's in the job description, they're going to apply. Whereas a woman like
mm.
might not even apply if she only hits 80%.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
kind of the same.
wild.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with this of just like trying to get women to shift their mindset to like think more like a man in that sense and in terms of how you view your own capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, we are, and I've been there like a bit more reserved. I think obviously we can't speak for every woman, but that is a feeling that I get is like we're a little bit more risk adverse, which is why we make better leaders typically, and a bit more kind of considered and wanting a bit more security. And I mean, yeah, I can understand that. But there's another you mentioned about the lack of kind of mobility in businesses with women. And Riley and Hertility recently did a white paper. They called it a red paper because they're period products, which I loved. And they were referencing that I think 67%, I hope I got the statistic right, of women have considered quitting around the time of their menopause because of lack of sufficient support in the workplace, which is a wild number. And it was interesting because around the time I read that, I also read this statistic. I think also it was from McKinsey that in the C-suite, the ratio of men to women is still 2 to 1.
Mm,
And the average age of a member of the C-suite is 55. And the average woman hits her menopause around 45. And it lasts for about 10 years. So I'm like, hang on a second now, right? So we're trying to like bust our asses to get into the C-suite. This is the most pinnacle point in our careers. And yet our hormones are sending us absolutely off the wall, which is a very real thing for any woman that has had, which I think most of us had at this point, any sort of hormonal fluctuations or difficulties or, mental health challenges in relation to our hormones. Like I know I've had that in a massive way. And I'm like, we have all this going on, the hot flashes, the lack of sleep, all of this stuff. Some people are doing it while also doing the lion's share of the work and having children and minding the children, keeping them alive, feeding them, giving them energy and support.
mm,
And then it's like, of course, we don't make it really into the C-suite because all this is lingering in the background. Like trying to just even show up to a job and be somewhat normal while we have these things going on in the background or while women are dealing with menopausal symptoms, perimenopause, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then like it's the point in your career where you're kind of like trying to get into the most kind of prominent role in the business. I don't think we're set up for success at all. And I'm like, maybe we do need to get all the women out there working for ourselves.
I mean that, yeah, but that's the other thing about it, right? Is like the fact is when you work for yourself, nobody's telling you how long your maternity leave is. And don't get me wrong, like there are downsides too. You don't have anyone paying for your healthcare, nobody's paying into your pension unless you set one up for yourself, all of those sorts of things. So a lot of the benefits that come with like a big corporate role don't exist anymore when you work for yourself. But at the same time, I look at my company and it's amazing to think that I could have kids or if I need to care for my parents one day or whatever it is, and I'm not going to have to like take vacation. I can work whenever I want to. I can like be on maternity leave or not be on maternity leave or whatever the gray area is in between there, and have the flexibility to do my work in a way that really fits with my life. And even right now, while like kids is not a thing that's on my immediate horizon, the fact that like I can work from wherever in the world my clients are or wherever in the world I happen to want to be. It's just like a degree of flexibility that lets me live the life that I want to live. And women have more constraints on their time than men do in a lot of, biological and physiological senses. So
Mm.
shouldn't we design a working life, a professional life that is compatible with those other aspects of our life? To
Mm.
me, that's such a huge benefit of working for yourself, is just giving yourself that power.
Yeah. Yes. And this is why I want to do it. Is like, I want this freedom. I want to be able to just travel around and live wherever I want, but I also want to have a lot of money. And that's another thing, right? It's like we're shamed if we say we want to have a lot of money. I want to be rich and build my empire. It's okay to say and put it out there that we want to be wealthy as well, which is something that we always just feel so ashamed about saying.
Yeah, but it's like it's high risk, high reward, right? Like nobody ever got rich in like a middle management job at a corporate company. Like, sorry, it's a fact. The most you're going to be is comfortable, and that's plenty
Yeah.
enough for a lot of people. But when I look at the upside of what I'm doing and building my own business, it's a lot greater than it was when I was in my corporate role. Yes, my corporate role was stable and all of that, but there was only so much, opportunity there because it was capped by like the rate of promotion and
Mm.
how high I could actually climb, which like given that I already led a communications function, like there wasn't much to go up, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like I'd hit that ceiling anyway. And now there is no ceiling, it's limitless. And, I've
Mm.
seen women in my fields do incredible things. And, friends of mine who have built communications agencies and sold them and have incredible lives now and things like that. And so for me, I look at that and it just feels like there's so much greater potential there as well. But as with any entrepreneur, like I said, it is high risk, high reward, and it's directly about you get out what you put into it. So the amount of work that you
Mm.
put in, like you aren't enriching anyone other than yourself, which is great, but also the pressure is there to like grind.
I completely agree. And also it's interesting what you said about the middle management or the being comfortable in a corporate job. I feel like so many of us in society, and I fell into this trap as well, get it wrong when we think about our careers because it's like, oh, I want to be a manager working at Google, whatever, whatever. Obviously, Google is one of the companies that pays really well, so that's fine. But you're trapped in this system where you're working your ass off to try and get a promotion. You're spending so much time and energy on this promotion that's been promised to you next year, whatever it is. And it's like the carrot is dangled. But really, you're only going to get another bump in 5K maybe a year, maybe 10 if you're lucky. If you're the 10 would be a good result. What's that per month when you break it down? And what does that mean for your life? Nothing. You just increase your spending, your outgoings every month and adapt to that lifestyle. And really, as you said, you're just comfortable. It was when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad that my whole life changed, my whole perspective. I was like, oh my God, I do not want to be in this kind of setting where I am at the mercy of someone else. There's also this power dynamic where you're working for someone else. And if it's not working and they're paying your bills and they're being really horrible or you're in a really toxic culture, where do you go from there? You just feel completely trapped. So I think, yeah, having the freedom to work for yourself and call the shots as an individual, you have to kind of reap what you sow, but that's also super rewarding. Time check. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Camilla, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me on our collective favorite platform, LinkedIn. My name's Camilla Boyer, so you can just search me up there, and you can find my company Corazon, which Corazon means heart in Spanish. So it's all about stories from the heart and doing work that's from the heart. So you can find us on LinkedIn as well, and also on Instagram, Corazon underscore LTD.
Amazing. Camilla, thank you so much for coming on here. It was just so lovely to have this conversation. Obviously, we've been talking about doing this for a while, so sorry that it took so long, but here we are.
Here we are. We made
Um,
it happen, and it's been
yeah.
great to get to have this conversation with you. So thanks for having me.